Hello, my name is Anna, and we have a very amazing, a very special guest today. This is Anna Vольtz, the Dutch writer, who has written about 24 books for young readers. Is it right, Anna?
Yes.
Yes. One of these books, Plaster Cast, has been released in Samokata publishing house recently, and several other books were also published in Polandria and are well known and beloved by young readers in Russia. And we invited Anna to discuss some special things about her work and her books. So Anna, I'm very glad to see you. Thank you for coming.
Yes.
Preparing for this interview, I discovered that you have been writing since the early childhood. So my first question is it about calling? And how can a person recognize his talent in what he's doing, especially in writing?
Well, I don't think it's something you recognize straight away. You just have to try and see whether you're talented or not. And for me, it started with reading a lot. As a child, I loved reading. And at some point I thought, why are all these authors allowed to make up stories? I want to make up my own stories. And I didn't think about talent or whatever, really. I just thought about stories, and I wanted to make up my own stories. So I just started writing. And at first it was just for fun and just because I loved inventing characters and events so much. When I write, I make this entire world in my head, and that's an amazing feeling. I still love that feeling. You start with nothing, and then slowly you're building this world. And at some point I thought, okay, maybe this writing is not just fun for me, but maybe other people would like to read what I'm writing. So it took me a while to realize that I could really be a professional author. Of course, I mean, it's always difficult to become a truly professional author and earn enough money to live off. So at first I thought writing would be a hobby and I would have real work as well. And now writing books is my real work.
And do you remember the first story you wrote? What was it about?
Well, actually, when I was 12, I made up this story about 5 kids who start their own restaurant. Their parents are on a long holiday, and the children, 5 of them, are all by themselves in this house, and they don't have enough money. And the oldest girl, 15-year-old Laura, she loves cooking. And I invented this story because I myself, I love to cook. And I dreamt of opening my own restaurant, but I was 12. And when you're 12, you can't open your own restaurant, but you can write about it. So I started to write about this dream of mine. And at first, when I was 12, I didn't succeed in writing a whole book. But actually, when I was 17, this became my very first book for children. So it is the idea I had when I was 12. That book was published much later on, but it was still the idea I had when I was 12.
Speaking about your books, each of your books deals with questions which are quite hard, but definitely need to be discussed with young people. I mean that there are difficult, complicated subjects in there, and we call it brave literature in Russia, and especially at Samokata. These books are about first disappointments and about troubles, family troubles and complex feelings. And I wanted to ask you if you have any rules or restriction when writing about it. Or it goes,
you mean rules from my publisher, or?
I mean your inner rules, that maybe you have some inner restrictions.
Yes, in a way. I mean, I feel very free to write whatever I want, but I also think about my audience. And I don't write mainly for grown-ups. I mean, I really like it when adults read my books as well. And I'm very happy when adults love my books. And I hear about quite a lot of adults who do like my books. But my main audience are children. And some of my books are for 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds or 14-year-olds. So it varies. But I always think about my audience. So I won't write things that are just not in the world of my audience. I mean, I won't write about, well, sex scenes, for example, for 10-year-olds. I mean, that's just crazy. I know 10-year-olds, and even when they think about kissing, they're like, that's gross. They don't want to think about even kissing. So I always think about things like that. But at the same time, I think that children, I mean, they are people. They are just like adults in many ways. And it's not, some people think, oh, children, they're small, they only have small problems.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not true. Children can have huge problems. And I do want to write about some of these problems. For example, well, parents who are getting divorced. When you're 10 or 12, that's so big in your life. It influences everything about your life and about your outlook on the world. In Gip's, for example, the 12-year-old main character, her parents have just told her that they are getting a divorce. And this girl, she questions everything, and she doesn't know whether she still dares to fall in love, because she now sees her parents, and they were in love at first, and now they're getting a divorce and they're fighting all the time.
Yes.
So that influences the life of a 12-year-old hugely. So I do write about things like that, and I don't think that's too big for young people.
Mm-hmm. How did it come to you? I mean, this plot about divorce, for example, do you need to experience something yourself, or you just can write and describe something you yes, how it feels, you know?
It's always a combination of some. Gip's is set in a hospital. The entire story takes place in a hospital, and my sister is a doctor, so she has told me a lot about hospital life. And before I started writing, I was allowed to come with my sister for an entire day and an entire night. So I had this little notebook in my pocket, and I was just allowed to walk around in the hospital, and even at night. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was sitting in this empty waiting room and just writing, okay, what do I hear? What does it smell like? What does it feel like to be in an empty waiting room at 3 o'clock at night? Things like that, I really want to experience myself. So for all my books, I do a lot of research before I start writing. But at the same time, I've never experienced my parents getting a divorce. My parents are still together.
Very good.
But Yeah, luckily. But at the same time, I have quite a lot of friends whose parents are divorced, and now I'm 39 now, so some of my friends are getting a divorce themselves and are doing co-parenting with the kids, being in one house for a couple of days and then going back and forth to mom and dad. And when I hear those stories, to me, I don't really listen as an adult. I hear those stories through the ears of a kid. So when this guy tells me about his kids being in his new house for the first time, immediately I start imagining myself as a 12-year-old going into my dad's new house. So a lot of little things from my books are real, but the big story is my imagination.
So I had a question about a place of the plot where main characters meet in Gip's, and you told me that your sister is a doctor, but another question is why did you choose the hospital as a place? Because as for me, it just emphasizes the loneliness and the sadness of characters. And that sometimes it makes reading the book incredible for me. I mean, I feel very I feel very maybe depressed because it is very sad.
Well, hopefully it's not just sad. I think there are lots of little funny parts as well, but of course the whole setting. Well, I think the whole corona crisis has changed our way of looking at hospitals a bit. To me now, hospitals are also a very, very sad place. And the biggest problems right now are in hospitals. But under normal circumstances, there are also lots and lots of people who just are in the hospital for a couple of days and then they get better. I had my son in a hospital. I mean, one of the most important things of my life happened in a hospital, giving birth. I mean, in Gip's, they are at the what's it called? Where all the new babies are. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, a hospital, to me, it's not just sad. It's a place where everything is heightened, where everything is really intense. And it is suddenly about life and death. And I think right now with Corona, things are way too much about life and death. We're fed up with things being about life and death. We want the little things and the ordinary things, and we just want to hug each other and that's it. But in normal life, especially 12, 13, 14-year-olds, they are looking for kicks and for things that are really exciting. And I mean, if I wrote a story about just a very happy family being at home, that would be very boring. I always search for topics and settings that are interesting. And so a hospital contributes so much to the story. Almost everything that happens in a hospital is interesting. I don't know how it is in Russia, but in the Netherlands, these hospital television series are very popular.
Yes,
people love watching television series about a hospital. And well, I think most people just find it very interesting what happens in hospital. So I thought it would be fun just to, I mean, Gip's in a way, it's this romantic hospital comedy / tragedy for 10-year-old.
Everybody loves hospitals.
Yeah.
I see. Thank you. As far as I know, you often meet your with your young readers, and as far as I understand, this is a part of your work as a writer, no less than writing itself. Why is it important for you, and how does it help you when you meet young readers?
Yes, I love meeting my readers, and that's very sad right now, of course, because I haven't met my readers for so long now. So I think in October, I was at a school for the last time. After that, people from outside weren't allowed in Dutch schools anymore. So I've done some digital meetings, but meeting kids live is, well, it is more fun, of course, because, well, I am 39 and I write for children and I write about children. So for me, it's so wonderful to be able to go into all these schools and classrooms and just talk about, I talk with my readers, but they're also in a way my characters. I write about kids just like my readers. And we also talk about things like, things like Instagram or TikTok or social media and the way it influences their lives. When I was 12, we didn't have Instagram. So it's also very, useful for me to meet young people. And of course, it's so much fun. I love kids. I wouldn't write for kids if I didn't like them. So I always feel happy being in a classroom with 30 kids who have read my books and ask me questions about my books.
And how can you describe young readers? Are they different from our generation, for example? I know that definitely they are, but what is the difference?
Well, in a way, I always try not to think about the difference, because in the Netherlands, people can be quite pessimistic about young people not reading anymore. Young people 20 years ago read more books than they do now. Everything about social media and YouTube and Netflix are just such a distraction, of course, and they take up so much time. Young people read less than they used to do. But I think, so in a way, their lives are different from my life when I was in high school. But at the same time, so much feelings are still exactly the same. The way it feels to be in love, that hasn't changed. Or how angry you can be fighting with your parents, or how insecure one can feel going to a new school, for example, meeting new people, unsure about your clothes or the way you behave. All those feelings haven't changed. So I always focus on the things that are universal. And I think my books are now getting translated into, I think, 22 languages, which is absolutely amazing. That's really a dream come true. But it must mean that my books are universal. People in Japan read my books as well. So it's all over Europe, America, Russia, well, just about everywhere really. So I think it's in a way people love reading about the universal stuff. It's also young people also find it very attractive to read about things they recognize straight away. For example, in my book Alaska, it's quite a lot about social media, and this guy, 13-year-old Sven, suffers from epilepsy, and at some point he has an epileptic seizure in school, and someone films the epileptic seizure with his mobile phone, and then the video of that scary epileptic seizure is all over the internet. Well, that's something young people really recognize, and most of them have experienced something like that in their own high school. So I do have, I mean, my books are not old-fashioned, but I do love to focus on the universal feelings.
And do you get any feedback from your readers? I mean, most, and which books are popular among them?
Sorry, you stopped there for a moment on my screen. So could you repeat the question?
I'm sorry. I mean, do you get any feedback from your readers? Do they tell you which books are most popular among them? I mean, your books. Which books do they like?
Yes, I do get a lot of feedback, a lot of emails, and of course, sales figures are feedback as well. I know which book gets sold most. And 100 Hours of Night is most popular in high schools. That's my best-selling book, and that's really a sort of young adult book, because my other books are also for, well, 10, 11, 12-year-olds. 100 Hours of Night is really for, well, maybe 12 year and onwards. In the Netherlands, it's 12 and onwards. In some other countries, it's 14 and onwards, because it's a bit more explicit than my other books are. But Alaska and Gip's and My Extraordinary Week with Tess, those books are also really popular. And it's funny, those are the books I wrote most recently. So up till now, it's every book I write gets more popular, which is scary in a way, because at some point that will have to stop. And I just finished a new book, and I just sent it to my publisher for the very first time. And it's a historical novel. It's set in London in 1940, so in the Second World War. So it's something entirely different. And I have no idea of course, I hope readers will like it as well. But that's always, well, quite scary.
And what is the secret about it? Why are they getting popular? What do you think?
Well, it's always difficult to say. I mean, I write the books I would have loved to read when I was young. I mean, in a way, I write for the 13-year-old Anna. I'm called Anna as well. That's a bit confusing with the two of us. But I mean, I write for me when I was young. Well, like I said, I try to focus on universal feelings. And I mean, there's always a big divide between books for children and books for grown-ups. And I think that's not right in a way, because children and grown-ups do have the same feelings. They share quite a lot of feelings. So universal feelings are not just feelings for kids. They're also feeling for adults. and apparently feelings across many countries as well. But why people like my books, it's very difficult for me to explain. Apparently my taste in stories is shared by many people. They just apparently we want to read the same books.
And let's talk about inspiration. I just wanted to ask you what inspires you, and I know that you are a big fond of riding a bicycle. What else?
It varies. Inspiration can come from anywhere, really. I mean, there's this. I always have the feeling there's part of my brain that's my writer's brain, and it's always alert, always looking out for new stories. So inspiration can come in everything I read or see on TV. Right now, with a 3-year-old at home, when my son goes to bed, I don't read a book. I'm just too tired to read a book. I watch Netflix, and some films or series can be very inspirational as well. It's what my friends tell me. It's what I read in newspapers. When I go on a holiday, well, for example, 100 Hours of Night is set in New York. Mm-hmm. And a couple of years ago, I lived in New York for 3 months because I was fed up with writing for a bit, because I had written for years and years and years. And I thought, now it's my turn. I want to have my own adventure. So I went to live in New York for 3 months. And I did have my own adventure because there was Hurricane Sandy, the biggest hurricane ever in New York City. And half the city was blacked out. There was no electricity for 4 days and nights. So I was sitting there all by myself in pitch dark New York. And then those 4 days were just about surviving, really. And I was worried I would get too cold because central heating wasn't working. I was worried about not having enough food. I was worried about lots of things. And then when the lights came back on, then I thought, wow, I lived my own story. This is such an adventure. I can write about this. So I used Hurricane Sandy in 100 Hours of Night. So that way, everything in my life can be an inspiration.
And speaking about your schedule, can you tell us more about how your day goes and what helps you to stay productive during the day?
Yeah, well, that's a tragic question right now, because, well, there's a life before I had my son, and there's a life after I had my son, and there's a life with Corona. And I have to tell you, I'm a single mom. So once my son was born, suddenly I had so little writing time. My son goes to daycare 3 days a week. So those 3 days a week are my days for working and for writing. But right now, daycare is closed in the Netherlands. Since before Christmas, it's closed. So I'm a full-time mom right now. I can't write. It's impossible. And it's very frustrating because I was just finishing this book. But usually, I mean, without all these distractions, I love writing so much that it's never really difficult to start working. I mean, I always the bigger picture is I love writing, and I always manage to finish my book before a deadline. But at the same time, every day it takes me a while to get into the story, and every day I feel like a teenager not wanting to do his homework. And I'm seeking distraction, and I'm reading all the news sites, and I'm looking at funny videos and scrolling through social media. But I've learned at first, when that would happen every day, and it made me angry at myself. And I thought, oh, just get to work. But then after a couple of years, I realized that this scrolling through social media, reading news sites, it's just something I really need to prepare my brain for a new day of writing. And it gives me inspiration as well. So I don't know, maybe it's not true at all, but it's something I tell myself. I'm allowed to do all this because eventually I will.
I think
eventually I will.
That this is a very common and useful thought for us, for all of us. So thank you for giving it to us. And I guess the same situation was during the lockdown. I wanted to ask you how you managed, how you handled it. Was it hard for you?
What during the lockdown?
I mean, staying home during the lockdown with your kid. Was it difficult for you?
Well, the most difficult thing for me was not being able to work, because, well, like I said, I love writing, and especially right now, I just finished a book, and it was just a couple of chapters until I was finished, and then suddenly there was this new lockdown. So suddenly it was back to being a full-time mom, and I'm a very happy mother. I mean, I love my kids, and we have a lot of fun. So when I managed to forget the whole working part, it's not difficult at all, really. I mean, it's exhausting, of course, taking care of a 3-year-old all by yourself all the time, but it makes me very happy. But I did have this nagging part of my brain telling me I should write, and I really, really wanted to finish my book. So I did try to write, and I have quite a small house, so I don't have a separate office. So I would sit writing in my living room, and my son would be in his bedroom with a babysitter. And I just brought all his toys and books and everything to his room, so he would, but well, I mean, with the weather being really cold and rainy, they couldn't go outside, so my poor son had to sit there for hours, and we didn't do that often. That was maybe three mornings, and that was it, because I mean, I would love to write right now, but my son being happy is more important.
And maybe the last question I wanted to ask you, if there is something you haven't tried yet and you would like to try, I mean, to write about in the future, maybe new subject or new characters, something.
I don't know yet. It's always a very exciting thing, starting a new book. And I'm still very much in the book I just finished. And it will need some rewriting, and the whole production process and publication will take up all my time. And after that, I will start thinking about a new book. And I've written quite a lot of books already. So it's not like I have this huge pile of ideas ready. It's really, I will have to think, and it will be quite difficult with the whole, will I write about the world after Corona, during Corona? Will I just ignore Corona? I don't know yet. The book I'm writing right now is an historical novel, and I'm actually quite happy about that, because right now I wouldn't know what kind of world to describe. When I start a book, I know it will be finished maybe after a year and published after a year and a half. And so what will 2022 will be like? We don't know yet. So the whole future feels quite vague in my head right now. And that affects my plans for a new story as well. I hope, once my new book is published and once the whole reviews and the first reactions are over, then it will be summer, and hopefully we'll all be in a somewhat better, happier world. And then I will have, then I will just think about what's next.
Maybe, do you have any plans to write for adults?
Not right now, no. Maybe eventually. But right now, I have this actual kids living in my own house, which is, of course, a big inspiration. I've already written 2 picture books for young children. I mean, someone else made the illustrations, but I did the text for the picture book. And I've also written a book for about 6-year-olds. So maybe I will do a bit more like that. I'm just, not really using my son in stories, but getting my inspiration from his life and his friends. So maybe at some point I will write for adults, but not right now. No, I really love young people.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say that we've been waiting for your new books, and we'll be happy to read them. So I was very happy to meet you.
Yes, and you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.